Yeah, I too would like to thank Reverend Kuniyuki, Jamie, and all those who were involved in, inviting me to be on this panel. This is a topic that I've been pondering over for the past almost 50 years, and I'm still pondering over it. I must admit that I find it very challenging to try to put in my thoughts into words that make sense. But I will try, and I hope I succeed. Let me first start by giving you a little background of my background so that you will understand where I'm coming from. Like many of you, I was born into the Honganji family. My parents had a large obutsudang in the house and did their rituals every morning and every night. My mom would offer the rice at the altar in the morning and recite the Nembutsu. And every night, both of them would go before the altar and recite the Nembutsu. And of course, they made sure that they observed all the memorial services. You know, they were from Japan, and so all my relatives were all in Japan. I knew none of them, but they made sure that we had their memorial services, and had to be done before the exact date. And so that's what I observed. And we lived way out in the boonies outside of Pahoa at one end of the railroad track that ran all the way to Kapoho, to Puna, Hilo, all the way to Pauilo. And that was the length of the railroad track. We were on the very end, on the other side. And so, so we were way out there. So Ola Puna Honganji was the closest. But I remember when I was a young kid, the minister used to come on the train, or Muroka they called it, would come from Ola to our little village in Kauleao, and would have the monthly service. And they usually had it at our house. And I think maybe it was because we had the largest obutsudang in the village, or maybe because we had the largest living room in the village, or maybe my parents were more ardent Honganji members. I don't know why, but it seemed like we had the Monday service at our house most of the time. And so that's what I was exposed to. And so my understanding of the Honganji was that. And of course, my mom used to remind me about bachi, that if I behave badly, bachi ga ataru, and one of the bachi say if I were mean to a dog or a cat, that in my next life I'm going to be born as a cat or a dog. Things like that. That's the kind of background that I grew up with. And so I was led to believe that the memorial services that they made sure they be observed were for the sake of our ancestors. And of course, we were constantly reminded about Ong, Oya no Ong, Sensei no Ong, all the different that we had to make sure that we observed. And I was thinking that that is Honganji, okay? And I did attend Sunday school in the next village, Kapoho. And so early in the morning, about 4:30, the train would come back in front of my house, and so I would get on the train and go on to Kapoho, and we would have Sunday school over there. I'd play there all day, and then take the train back late in the afternoon. And so that is the kind of understanding that I had of what the Honganji was. And then, of course, when I got married at the Hawaii Betsing, and that was in 1960. And then I had a son the following year, and then a daughter in 1963. And that daughter, unfortunately, was born with a heart defect. The chamber that's supposed to pump the blood through the lungs was not formed at all. And so she was what they call a blue baby. Yeah, her lips were blue, her fingertips were all blue, because she wasn't getting oxygen in her system. And so Dr. Mamiya was just started about a year, 2 years prior to that, became a surgeon, heart surgeon, and he was already known quite well that he was one of the best heart surgeons at that time. And he advised us that short of a heart transplant, that child has no hope. But said maybe if we were to bypass the brachial artery to the lung, that would then pump some oxygen and get some oxygen that way. And so we tried that. But unfortunately, she was too weak, couldn't survive. And I remember my mom mentioning, when found out that my child was born that way, she lamented, oh, is this bachi, some kind of bachi. And so that kind of, gave me a feeling of guilt. What did I do? What have I done? Maybe I didn't do something. But that's the kind of thought that haunted me, yeah? And so, anyway, my child was just under 2 years old when she finally died. And at the funeral, of course, Reverend Oi was at the Betsing at that time, and he officiated the funeral. He also officiated our wedding, by the way. And so we asked him to do the service, and he did. And after a service, he gave us a schedule of memorial services. 7 days, 7 days, 7 days, for 49 days, and then 100 days, and all that. You all know that. And so, by then, my third child was born, and she was only about 4 months old. And so with my two kids, my wife and I, we attended services every week. Every week. I don't remember what day my daughter had died, but let's say she had died on Monday, we went to the service every Monday for 7 weeks. Well, actually 6. And for the 7th week, for the night-day service, by then I had moved to Kaneohe, to the house that I'm living there now. And so when we moved there, I heard that Reverend Shirasu was at Kailua. He was recuperating from his heart attack. but he was at Kailua. And so, since I knew him from the time I was a child, he was at Hilo Betsing, and this was before the war. He was at Hilo Betsing. My oldest two brothers were attending Hilo High School and staying at the Hilo dorm. And so our parents would go visit our brothers, and would stop by, and Rami Shirasu was something like the headmaster or something, so we got to know him. And then, of course, he moved to, after the war, he was at Punahonganji, and so we became close again. So I've known him for a long time. So anyway, I called him if he would do the 49-day service and house blessing at the same time. So he came, and we renewed acquaintance and all that. And then he invited me to go to Kailua Hongaji, start going there. So I did. A few weeks later, I started going there. And there, after service one day, I was talking with Richard Wasai. Many of you know him or knew him. I was telling him about all those 7-day memorial services that I was doing for the sake of my daughter. And he says, Cookie, it's not for your daughter's sake, it's for you. I said, nah, you're kidding me. Because this is the way I was maybe never told that, but that's the impression that I received. And so that's the way I understood it to be. And so he told me, if you don't believe me, why don't you go talk to Reverend Fujitani? And he was then the Fukurimbang at Betsuing. At that time, the bishop was the Rimbang. And so I went to see Reverend Fujitani, and he told me, yes, Richard is right. And he explained to me about Jiriki, Tariki, and all those things. And it blew my mind, really blew my mind. And that's when I really came to realize what, that I was so misled all those years. And so I consider Richard and my daughter as bodhisattvas. They are the ones who made it possible for me to become, to learn what the real Shinshu teaching is. And so I learned about the 18th vow and Jiriki, Tariki, and all that. So all my life, the Nembutsu has been a Jiriki effort. Yeah? I would say Nembutsu, like Reverend Yuka said, to get a better grade or whatever. And so the Nembutsu has always been like a prayer, asking favors. It's almost like, as I understand, for the Nichiren Shu, yeah? They chant the Namo Renge Kyo and they think that they can get favors. I always joke about that, but anyway, ever since I was exposed to the difference, and gain a little more understanding about the difference, I have made it sort of my mission to try to get our Hongaji members to understand that. I have no qualms with lessons, based on Jiriki for little children. That there is reward for good effort and good behavior. But there will come a time in one's life when one needs to understand that good behavior is not for reward, but for good of society in which he is a part of. For example, children are told about Santa Claus, about tooth fairies, as though they are real. Yeah, little children. But such fairy tales are upaya and are okay for little children to get them to behave. But they must outgrow them one day. And the sooner they learn, the better. But to continue to believe in those fairy tales into adulthood gives them a lot of trouble. In our Honganji, I like to bring some example closer to us. We have some sutras and rituals that seem to contradict the basic tenets of the Honganji, the Jodo Shinshu. One sutra that bothers me in particular is the sutra I Gasho to Amida. And we chant that regularly. And I think many people read those words and take those words as gospel. There is one stanza that reads, "When I'm lonely, I recite Namo Amida Butsu. Then I feel great compassion. I Gasho to Amida." That statement may be acceptable for little children, but I don't think that it is appropriate for adults. It appears to me that it is encouraging reciting the Nembutsu like it is a practice that will generate a feeling of compassion. If it is, that would be Jiriki practice. This is akin to, as I understand as I mentioned earlier, Nichiren Shu followers who said, Namo Rengekyo. Yeah? I don't think we should be encouraging our members to recite the Nembutsu to gain favors for oneself or for others, altruistically or just to feel better. To me, the Nembutsu is an expression of gratitude that is not conjured up. I like to compare that to tears that well up when one is moved by emotion. The Nembutsu should be a response. I'd like to share an experience that I had not too long ago. One of our longtime members, she was in a care home. She was hardly mobile. And so her daughter one day brought her to our temple, to our new temple in the wheelchair. And she was too feeble, but she was still okay. She could recognize us and talk. And so when she went before the altar, she barely could stand up, but she forced herself to stand up. And she bowed deeply and Namantap, Namantap, Namantap. It was so sincere, made me cry. That I thought was a real sincere Nembutsu. I was sitting right in the front row, so I could hear and see her. And she was so sincere. To me, being a student of Jodo Shinshu, and I like to consider myself a student of Jodo Shinshu, is to follow the teachings of Shinran Shonin. Oftentimes, there appears to be conflicts between what I understand to be the teachings and what is practiced. For example, we talk about Ondobo Ondogyo. Yeah? What is that? Fellow travelers? fellow students of the Nembutsu. But we often make distinction between ministers and lay. That ministers can go certain parts of the altar and lay cannot. We make distinctions. How come? Why? I thought Shoni said there's no difference. It seems to me that memorial services are still being conducted in a manner that convey that the services are being done for the sake of the dead, to honor and memorialize the dead, to pay homage to the dead, to save or guide the spirit of the dead to a more secure place. Is it any wonder why that understanding, that I grew up with that understanding? I think we should maybe we should take a survey to see, of the number of people that attend memorial services, whether, when the temples send out notice about your 10th year or 11th, 13th year, whatever the year of the memorials, when you send out notices, they all come to attend the services. Now, when they come, how many of them are really coming for their own benefit or for the sake of the dead person? I have a feeling that majority of them, they think that they're coming because to honor or to memorialize the dead. And this is the time of Obong, and we still talk about Mogalana. And the story of Mogalana implies or gives us the feeling that that's what it is for. Why? Why are we still doing that? So Jodo Shinshu to me is a doctrine by which to live by my daily life in harmony with nature, with gratitude. To me, there is no sin as defined by Christians. As such, there is no bachi. Of course, if you hit somebody, somebody's going to retaliate. But that is not bachi. I believe there is a difference between good and bad, but everything is situational and conditional. What may be good in one situation may be totally bad in another situation. There is no absolute, absolutely no absolute. Only the Dharma, which is the truth, is absolute. And the Dharma is that nothing is absolute. So it's a circle. I choose to be a Jodo Shinshu follower, so student, because I find great comfort in living each moment in peace and harmony with nature, including people, plants, animal, environment. And I also find comfort in knowing that I don't need to do any religious practice to be saved, because I am already embraced by the Buddha of infinite wisdom and compassion. When I realize this, I can't help but feel Namanda. Thank you.